work with people and push people up and see their strengths and grow them, that it's something that I cognizantly look for. But that was a big one. I mean, I just blew so many great people out of the business, Daniel, because they weren't running like me. I'm like, are you a runner? No. Okay, next, right? And what I didn't know is that I could have built them into somebody who would have created something really great in their life over time. So that was a big deal.
Who was that first mentor for you, man? I mean, who was that first person looking back saying, man, this dude or this lady or somebody like changed my life? Who was that?
Yeah, that's a great question. The answer is it was my boss from that church. So prior to him introducing me to the financial business, part of my job description, Daniel, I had to read these certain sort of self-improvement books. He would just get a book for everybody on the staff and you had to read it and we had to talk about it. And so I read a couple of books that totally changed my thinking before I was ever shown an opportunity in business, to start thinking like a business person, start looking at cause and effect in life. Like, hey, you're not doing well financially. Well, why? Why aren't you doing well financially? Well, maybe you're not solving enough people's problems. Maybe you're not having a skill set and it just caused me to, instead of just bumping through life and saying, hey, the world isn't fair, I started learning about how the world actually worked. And then, using some of the things I was learning to kind of mold myself to that. So instead of me and the world being like this, which is most people, right? I want the good old days. I want the union. I want the this. I want the Social Security. What they want and what the world is giving them is different, and they just clash with it all the time and lose. I started learning how to mold myself through this guy, right? So he was my first real mentor. Today, we're still great friends. I just saw him a couple of weeks ago in Las Vegas, and just a great guy, and really took an interest in a liking to me in my own personal development.
Do you remember any of those first books that he recommended?
Absolutely. A book that changed my life was called If How-Tos Were Enough, We'd All Be Thin, Rich, and Happy, by a guy named Dr. Brian Clemmer. And it's this little book. You probably read it in an hour. But the concepts he had in that book, Daniel, they changed my life. I mean, they really did. I saw things from a different perspective so that when opportunity found me, I could recognize it. I'm like, hey, this looks like something that I'm reading about that could really change my life. Instead of being like, I don't know, I need to think about it, I need to pray about it. I was like, no, this looks like what I read about. And so I'm going to take a shot here because I want my life to be different than it is now.
Well, why do you think people use the I want to pray about it so often? Why do you think that comes up? I mean, when there's a transition, a time that they can change their life, they're like at that moment, why do they use that so often? And then they don't change, and they never change after that.
Sure. I think it's a defense mechanism. It's an excuse that people can use to abscond their responsibility for their own decisions in life. Like, listen, I'm a pastor. I think prayer is vitally important, but like, we don't need to pray about whether we cross the road or not, what to eat for dinner probably, whether or not we should get out of debt, make more money, take care of our families. I don't think those are things that need to be prayed about. I think those are things that are clearly written about, So I think a lot of people do that because it gets people off their case, right? Like, oh, just say I need to pray about it. People will leave me alone, and then I don't have to make a decision. But like, Geddy Lee from Rush says, when you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. And so that's what they're doing. They don't want to say no. They don't want to own the responsibility of declining opportunities. So they just kind of scapegoat it off there,
Hey, Ian, look, you've had an incredible ride, man. I mean, you went from 23 years old, broke and in debt, to today have an incredible lifestyle. But there had to be some struggles. I know I had some struggles along the way. I know I had some adversity along the way. What are some of the challenges that you would say you had, and how did you overcome them?
It's a great question. I did have challenges. Virtually all of them were self-inflicted. So I was very fortunate that I did not have a lot of outside challenges. However, my inside challenges were numerous and pretty substantial. I was not a good relationship builder. I'm that quintessential A-type person. If you and I and two of our buddies are in a high school group class in science class, and we've got a group project, I'm the guy that's like, you three go sit in the corner. I'll be done in half the time and we'll get an A. So you just leave me alone and I'll do it. I was the guy that did it. I was not the guy that figured out how to endear people to himself to do something even greater together. And so that took me a long time. I'm still not great at it, if we're being honest, but it's not a liability in my life anymore. I'm aware enough that I need to work with people and push people up and see their strengths and grow them, that it's something that I cognizantly look for. But that was a big one. I mean, I just blew so many great people out of the business, Daniel, because they weren't running like me. I'm like, are you a runner? No. Okay, next, right? And what I didn't know is that I could have built them into somebody who would have created something really great in their life over time. So that was a big deal for me.
Although I just want to jump in real quick. I mean, because I relate to you big time on that area, because I'm an A guy too. And you know me. I mean, I'm running. I'm going. I'm always blowing and going.
Yeah.
But do you think, and this just popped in my mind right now, because I've been talking a lot about this. Do you think, though, Ian, because you were a runner and you didn't allow a lot of those people that just were not ready, you maybe more so found, because you were just running, you ended up finding the people that wanted to run with you? Because I think one of my biggest mistakes in business, period, because I do believe, like you, I blew a lot of people out too, man. I blew them out. Now, I think maybe some of these people were probably going to get blown out anyways.
Oh,
I just blew them out a little earlier.
Yeah.
But do you think that sometimes, because my biggest mistake, man, is I wasted so much time trying to pull the people with me, versus, because it's almost like sometimes you're wanting them to win more than they want to win themselves.
Sure,
Do you relate to any of that? What do you say about that?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think that's a common thing that happens to leaders. I was so bad with my relationship building, Daniel. I did not have any of that by default. If you weren't running, I just didn't pay attention to you. But I think that to go back to kind of the first part of that question, it did hinder me, because I did lose some people that, with the systems I have now, would have been caught, taught, grown into great leaders, and they just don't exist today. The flip side of it is, I think every weakness is also a strength in some way. And it really did force me, all right, you're not running, I need somebody who will. And it forced me to go through a lot of people quickly that maybe I would not have gone through had I been a little bit better on the relationship side. So what would have happened? I don't know. I mean, there's so many different moving parts. I don't think we could have figured out, well, if I was better then and I didn't go get as many people, what would have happened? But it was a big issue. And a lot of people waste a lot of time with the wrong people. And then they burn out because they're like, nobody wants it like me. And that's just not true. There are people who want it like you. You just haven't found them yet. And, leaders are found. They're not developed. And that's a hard thing for a lot of people to understand. They're found, they're not developed. They can develop themselves, but we can't develop them. We can give them a roadmap, we can give them feedback, we can give them mentorship. Ultimately, they have to take it and use it, right? And a lot of people don't like that. They want to think, well, I have something to do with it. And we really don't. I was ready. My boss at the church was there. And there was a mentoring relationship. If I wasn't ready, no amount of books, no amount of forcing me to do stuff, no amount of accountability would have changed anything in my life.
If you like this video and you want to watch another one, click right here. If you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.